Haki is terrible and might be one of the worst power systems ever written. In this video, I'll explain why. I'll start with Armament Haki. This is the most used and the most problematic version. The basic techniques are enhancement, hardening, and imbuement. All of the moves are basically the user increasing their power level. Luffy hardening his arm increases his arm's power level, and Zoro imbuing his swords is him increasing his sword's power level. Enhancement Haki also allows people to hit Logia users, but I'll dive into that later. Power levels are terrible for any power system. I've explained it in my power escalation video, so watch that for more context. This Haki is especially disappointing for One Piece because before this, there was nothing close to power levels. Characters could fight with creativity or strategy. Armament Haki destroys that. Before, when One Piece had powerful characters, they would have to give them a good devil fruit or fighting style. Now all they need is Haki, which is almost as lazy as DBZ power levels. Whoever has a stronger Haki wins, no need for creativity. Let me display how lazy Haki is by adding it to previous or potential fights. In Luffy vs Crocodile, instead of using his blood to dampen and punch the sand, he would have just used Haki. And in this case, he wouldn't have lost twice already, and in the second fight, he wouldn't have even come up with the strategy of spitting water to wet the sand and soak himself. In Luffy vs Enel, Luffy wouldn't have even needed the hard counter of rubber against lightning. He would just use Haki. In Luffy vs Lucci, he wouldn't need Gear 3rd. He'd just use a level of Haki that is powerful enough to shatter Lucci's Tekai. In Zoro vs Dad's Bones, he wouldn't have needed to learn how to cut steel, because with Haki, he'd already be capable of doing that. Even though I criticized those last two fights in my fighting style analysis, what they had is significantly better. And for a theoretical fight, Zoro vs Sanji or Luffy would have been interesting, because the latter would have to find a creative way to avoid getting cut, since they have no metal to defend themselves against Zoro's blades. Sanji would have the additional problem of his legs having a shorter range than Zoro's swords. With Haki, this problem is eliminated with a lazy solution. Sanji might still have to worry about range, but with hardening, getting hit isn't that big of a problem anymore. Haki also has advanced techniques like emission and internal destruction. While I stopped reading the Wano arc before this was introduced, I can still tell you that it is stupid. These are more lazy and universal power-ups that avoid coming up with creative solutions. It also allows the story to create lazy powers for villains. Kaido is allowed to be nearly invincible because a strong enough Haki can damage him. Same goes for the three admirals and their Logia powers. Crocodile and Enel had a counter written into their fights, but these three were overpowered without a weakness because Haki can deal with it now. Without Haki, none of these lazy and foolish decisions would have been made. Furthermore, the limits of Haki are very non-existent. The only time I remember a character getting tired from using Haki is Luffy when he used Gear 4th. But then again, even Gear 2nd and 3rd exhausted Luffy before Haki existed, so this isn't much of a drawback for Haki. Observation Haki is the second form of Haki. Basic techniques allow sensing presence, strength, emotion, and intent. The power system wants to be like DBZ so badly. I'll tackle these one by one. Presence sensing removes a fighter's strategy to hide during battle. Strength sensing is basically confirming that power levels exist, which is lazy. Emotion sensing is an extra cheap ability that is unnecessary. It can allow a character to cheat in a conversation that would otherwise create interesting complexities. But if the liar has an even better observation Haki, they can hide their emotions. Once again, power levels. Intent also makes fights lazier, because fighters can now accurately predict the future, unless of course the opponent has a higher power level. An advanced version of this technique is Future Vision, which is nearly broken. The ability at least has its limits, like only being able to see a short distance into the future, or the fact that what they saw can change, or that the user needs to focus. But it is still a broken ability, and ruined Luffy vs Katakuri. Instead of Luffy coming up with a creative counter to Katakuri's Mochi and Future Vision, he has to learn Future Vision mid-battle in order to win. Once again, power levels outweigh strategy. Additionally, all of the techniques from Armament and Observation Haki could have been unique moves for characters, but instead are given to everyone, which then limit the possibilities of battle, similar to the basics of Nen. The last one is Conqueror's Haki. This can't be learned through training and is only given to specific people with the qualities of a king. This is stupid. I can understand strong genetic powers or signature powers, but the strongest powers being given to those who have king-like qualities is personally too much. Basic techniques are Domination, Incapacitation, and Pressure. Domination is a weaker version of Incapacitation that doesn't knock out the opponent. Incapacitation is basically a fighter saying, "My power level is far greater than yours," which knocks out anyone with a low power level around them. This is so lazy. Instead of actually working to take down the small fry, characters can just now knock them out with their high power level. I believe even DBZ didn't have something this stupid. Pressure is when such a powerful conqueror's Haki is used that it has destructive effects on inanimate objects. Once again, this is stupid. An advanced version of this technique is infusion. This is basically a stronger armament Haki that also allows attacks to hit without making contact. I don't know the limitations of this move because I didn't read that far, but I'm going to guess that there are none or very minimal. In conclusion, Haki might be one of the worst power systems because it turns a story with fights that use creativity into one with fights that rely heavily on power levels, and it eliminates battle possibilities that existed before its introduction. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and check out my manga for free online. If you enjoy my content, please consider donating to my Patreon. All important links will be in the description.